Yo, welcome back to my channel. Listen, this has been one heck of a week. Of course, if you've been watching the news, we've heard about the American Airlines crash and how it collided with the Black Hawk military helicopter. And listen, I'm gonna be honest, I have not been able to let this story go. It is so bizarre to me. Like, I think I found out about it late at night, the night that it happened. Of course, that's when, the news broke. And ever since that day, I have just been stuck. As we all know, that on the American Airlines flight aboard, there were 64 passengers. And I think in the helicopter, there were three. So all in all, 67 people lost their lives in an instant. And it's so crazy to me because I talked about it on TikTok. The main thing that I just cannot get out of my head is the fact that they were about to land. That's what is crazy about this whole thing. The fact that they were about to land, and it kind of makes you think, like, how you on the flight and you hear, the pilot come on and announce, the landing or the last 20 minutes or the last 10 minutes, and they tell you to prepare, and you think like, hey, let me get my stuff, let me, put my tray up, let me, what I'm saying? Like, the fact that they thought this was about to be the end of their flight, not knowing that this was about to be the beginning of a lifelong grieving process for the people that love them, is crazy. It kind of makes you think about every flight that you've ever taken. The fact that that could have been any of us. And I know by now we've all seen, the guy who was being interviewed who said his wife texted him and said, hey, I'm about to land. And he said, okay, he was there to pick up his wife. He had just cooked dinner. And to get that news, I knew that was devastating. And it's crazy because you can even see, when the guy is being interviewed, he just was such I wouldn't even say calm, but you can just tell he probably was just out of it. He probably was just so stunned and shocked by disbelief that he just was like, I can't even show my true reaction. And I'm pretty sure, like, probably, late that night or the next day, it just hit him all at once. And it's crazy because the minute that you think like, okay, well, it's out of my mind, you scroll down your timeline, there's another piece of the story, or there is another, somebody else is talking about it, and it all comes back at once. And one of the main things that really crushes me is it's one thing to hear about a plane crash. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to hear about the tragedy. It's one thing to, to see the news reporting it, or it's one thing to see people talking about it. It's even one thing to see the two planes, crashing together. That was a horrible sight. But the thing that broke me the most was seeing the pictures that they took on that flight before takeoff. That shook me to my core. That shook me to my core. The girl Kia, like, just seeing her on the plane smiling with her natural hair in her natural state, seeing the moms of the figure skating team just taking one lap, a selfie, about to take off, thinking they just about to, not even knowing what's about to happen. That shook me to my core. I can't watch it. I can't even look at it. Like, every time I see the pictures come, I have to turn it off. I just seeing those pictures on that flight. And somebody had brought up a good point. Like, one of the reasons why it's just so hard to stomach, seeing those, last moments, pictures on that flight right before, this happened, is because, we didn't have that, during 9/11. You know what I'm saying? Just think about if 9/11, we had camera phones, or we had this type of media, outlets such as, TikTok or Instagram or whatever, where you can see somebody's last moments with them not even knowing that their name is about to be all over the world for a horrible reason. That breaks my heart, man. That breaks my heart. Like, when I saw those pictures, I just was just like, oh, because all you can do is correlate it to you. You know what I'm saying? And I don't do it often, but, sometimes I will, even for content, or for a TikTok vlog or something, you take a look, take off selfie, or, what I'm saying, for a vlog, right before you take off of the plane. And the fact that could have been any of us, it is wow. It is a very humbling experience because it humanizes you. You know what I'm saying? You almost have to not have a heart if you can't feel this. And to think like this was a mainline commercial airline. Like I was at work the next day and I was Googling like the last time, there was a, crash on the main line, commercial US airline. And I think it said 2009. Now I was in 12th grade. We didn't have like, mobile news. So to be honest, I don't even remember that. Like respectfully, I say that I don't even remember hearing about a major crash in 2009. The last thing before that, of course, that I remember was 9/11. But the fact that this happened on a main U.S. commercial airline, it is so wild to think about. And this is not about politics. This is not about politics. This is not about who's in the White House, who's not in the White House. This is not about this is why y'all should have voted for some. Listen, and I said this on Facebook, like, even if you did vote for Donald Trump, like, if you don't have any type of regret for making that decision, you still should be able to admit that the way this man handled and talked about this tragedy during that press conference, it was distasteful. It was so distasteful when, one of the reporters asked him, like, hey, are you going to go to visit the site? And the way like he responded, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to go do? Go swimming? Like, it just shows a bit of heartlessness from him. And that was so, that when I tell you that pissed me off to it crushed me for him to respond like that. Like, I was literally just on an American Airlines flight the week before. I was flew out by, American Airlines. They flew me to Dallas for a specific meeting. That's a whole nother conversation at a different time. And then in a week or so, I have to, get on a flight to go to DC. I'm usually that person. I wouldn't say I have flight anxiety, but I always get a little nervous during takeoff. So I'm one of those people that, like, when takeoff happens, I have to literally have my music on and I have to, like, close my eyes and sit back. And I'm one of those type people, like, within 5 minutes after takeoff, I'm knocked out. I have never stayed woke on any flight. Even, when I was flying back and forth to Chicago, I think from Ohio here where I live to Chicago is literally like an hour flight, is something like that. And I would be sleep on those like short flights. So I'm one of those type people that I be out in an instant. After takeoff, I'm good. Like, once the plane is in the air, I'm good. And even like the week before that, I remember being on the flight and I was thinking like, because I always get nervous during takeoff. I always get a little anxious during takeoff, but after that, I'm cool. And now it's just like even to the people that were asleep, like, can you imagine? Like, my prayer is that all of this happened like in an instant. My prayer and hope that them folks felt nothing. Like, can you imagine being on a plane and just being knocked out, having your headphones on, and all of a sudden you waking up in an instant and you in the river, or the plane is detached, or there's turbulence and noise and chaos. Can you imagine that, being woken up by that? But anyway, I was just on the American Airlines flight. I literally have a flight to DC this Thursday. And I'm not even going to lie, there was a great deal of fear that set in. And looking at this tragedy, like, it has a lot of people on edge. It has a lot of people just looking at, aviation, looking at the airlines, looking at flying in a whole totally different light. There are so many people that's up and down my timeline that, of course, they're giving their conspiracy theories, but there are just a lot of people that's just afraid. There's a lot of people that's just so uneasy about flying, let alone the flight attendants. Let alone, the pilots and the people that actually work in aviation. Like, there is such an unrest and an uneasiness and a fear right now about flying. Like I said, I literally have to this Thursday take an American Airlines flight to DC this week. And I'm not going to lie, like, fear set in for me at one point. When all of this happened, like, I was contemplating canceling my flight. I literally, like, 2 days later, I was like, okay, I got to go to DC. I'm about to look up a Greyhound. And I think the Greyhound bus literally said like 13 to 18 hours. I was like, I'm about to thug it out. I'm just about to go ahead, book this Greyhound flight, because I ain't messing around. You know what I'm saying? And there are a lot of people like on TikTok, a lot of people on Instagram that's like, I'm not flying again. But listen, I hate to say it, but aviation and the airline, it is a multi-million, probably billion dollar business that it just has to go on. There were flights probably that same day, flights that had to resume the next day, and people just, there were people on my timeline that was just showing how, just scared they were because they had to fly the next day or they had to fly 2 days later. So there's a lot of fear right now, and it kind of make me think like, y'all, are we still flying? Like, are we still getting on planes? Like, I literally came on the last video y'all saw of me. I was talking about how I really haven't traveled in the last 2 years, but this year was going to be the year I put my passport to use. This was going to be the year that I travel, and I literally just did a whole video about that on my last video talking about the new year. But in my opinion, I honestly think that we should not be fearful. I honestly think that we should not be fearful. This reminds me a lot like after 9/11. I don't know if anybody remembers, but after 9/11, Bishop Jakes, he did a series on fear. It was called I Will Fear No Evil. And I don't know if anybody know about that series, but I used to wear that series out. It was a 3-part VHS right after 9/11 where Bishop Jakes was talking about fear, because a lot of people, they were just afraid of everything. They were afraid of flying. They were afraid of eating certain foods. I think during that time, people was talking about E. coli and all this. It just was a lot of fear. And Bishop Jakes did a really good sermon series. And it made me think about that. Like, that's what we need. We need the word of God to go against that. We still need people to rise up and say, you know what? This happened, but I'm going to fly anyway. You cannot let this dictate your plans that you have already set. And let me just say this. I see a whole lot of people getting on TikTok like, I had a dream. The Lord showed. See, that's why. Listen, let me just say this. Fear is not discernment. It's one thing for God to show you something, for you to discern something in the spirit. All that is wonderful, is valid, but fear is not discernment. If your decision of not ever get on the plane again is due to fear and due to this one tragedy, that's not discernment, that's fear. Because we as people of God, we cannot live our life in fear. Listen, so do I think you should continue to fly? Absolutely. And do I think you should go on that vacation that you got booked? Absolutely. Do not let fear stop you. Do not let fear stop you. Now, one scripture that I do recommend is Psalms 91. Recite that. If you got a flight coming up, listen, you need to pray. If you need to look up some anxiety, techniques to go against that anxiety, do that. But do not let fear stop you. Do not let fear stop you.